All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast, your weekly look into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. My name is Robert Winfrey, and as always, thank you very much for being here. I'm always appreciative of the fact that anyone listens to my ramblings, so thank you very much. If you'd like to help out the show a little bit, you know the drill. Like, comment, subscribe, star rating, written review, yada, yada, yada. Even if you're not inclined to do any of that, seriously, just thank you for listening. Means a lot to me. So thank you. What do we got tonight? Well, yesterday there was UFC on ABC 6, which I was not able to cover live, but oh man, can I just tell you all? It feels so good to cut through. There's a bunch of fights on this card I probably would have skipped over, but just getting around the endless repetitive commercials. It's like the same six commercials on a loop, and four of them are the worst things you've ever seen. Just being able to get around that, oh my. I can't tell you how good that felt. The guy who winds up watching these things start to finish more often than not, and 6 hours is kind of the minimum. Um, oh, that felt good. That felt really good. Just felt good. So we'll have a full review of that. This coming Saturday is UFC International Fight Week 303. So we'll throw a preview that thing's way, that poor card. Um, the UFC did everything they could to make that work after the Conor thing. Speaking of Conor, he's in the news as well as some other fight announcements. So yeah, that's kind of what we've got on the agenda here this evening. So I think that's going to do it for the preamble. Let's jump into it, shall we? Okay, UFC on ABC 6. We begin with the prediction roundup. Okay, I changed two picks, and please don't cry BS on me about this one. Because they both changed from losers to winners. Would not have affected my overall score flipping from negative to positive. I would have been positive one way or the other. But one of them I did caveat initially last week pretty easily, the Pavlovich and Volkov. As soon as I saw those two next to each other, I went, actually, yeah, Volkov. The other one I switched Uzdemir over Johnny Walker. And I woke up the next day after that podcast and went, did you really pick Johnny Walker to win a fight? Especially a meaningful one? You buffoon. So I switched that, but that's it. Everything else was what it was. We had a very late notice for placement fight. Wound up being one of the ones I got wrong. There was an upset win for Felipe Lima, who subbed in late for Melsik Bagdasaryan. Again, upset Muhammad Naimov. I think Naimov would have beat Bagdasaryan, but there was some stuff Lima was doing. We'll get to that. What else did I get wrong? The first fight of the night, Chong Ho Lee defeated Xiao Long. Split decision, fun enough little fight. We did not have the fight between Dricus Dumas and who was he supposed to fight? Somebody who was not Dennis Talulin. Some travel issues with Dumas, I guess. We also I didn't preview this one, but if you want, as a moment, let's talk about the hurdles this poor card had to overcome. You had half of the main event fall out. So you had Ikram Aliskerov sub in for Khamzat Chimaev. Shara Magomedov was supposed to fight two other people before ultimately we got to the guy he did fight. We were supposed to get Said Nurmagomedov and Montel Jackson. Initially, we were supposed to get Abdullah Zaitar and Dennis Talulin. I already mentioned Bagdasaryan falling out. And then during fight week, let me save that for later. There was another late shift in things. that we'll talk about when we get to the fight in particular. But this card, that whole card, man, they held that thing together with like duct tape and chewing gum. And it managed to be an okay night of fights. This was not great, but it was okay. So ultimately, I went 9-2. I did not enter that into that column. So give me a sec, and we will do this live. Thank you very much. Appreciate your patience. That brings me to 175 and 83 on the year with 3 no contests. So, wound up being, when it turns out when the UFC books a bunch of fights where you kind of know what they want to happen, not really that hard to predict. Yeah, that was not terribly difficult. There's a couple though. There were a couple of split decisions. One of those legitimately could have gone either way. The Thukramdinov and Nicholas Dalby, close fight. I kind of thought Dalby won, but I think I scored it for Dalby when I watched it, but not. I'm not up in arms over that one. 29-28, either way there is perfectly fine. Jared Gordon, I felt terrible for. I thought he beat Haqparast, but yeah. So that's where we are at the moment. 9-2. Another fight fell out at the last minute. I'm very pleased with 9-2 is always a good time. So that's that. Done patting myself on the back. Let's get into the fights themselves, shall we? Main event, in 1 minute and 49 seconds, Robert Whittaker knocks out Ikram Aliskerov with punches. That's his first finish since he knocked out Jacare in, was that like 17? Hang on, where are you? Yeah, April of 17, so it's been a little over 7 years since he finished somebody in the UFC. Now, in fairness to that stretch, his fights after the Souza fight went as follows. Yoel Romero, twice. Lost to Izzy. Darren Till, Jared Cannonier, Calvin Gastelum. Izzy again. Marvin Vittori, lost to DDP. Then beat Paulo Costa. Now Aliskerov. Let me have a look at something real fast from Yoel Romero. Yeah, Yoel Romero has been finished a whopping 1 time in his entire career. So, I mean, that's still true. So I'm not going to hold not finishing him too much against him. The Darren Till one was weird. In fairness, it's not like Till gets just finished every other day. He had a rough stretch at the end, but then Cannonier. Jared Cannonier's another guy who just doesn't get finished all that often. Imavov did, but there was some dispute around that stoppage. Reyes did. That was up at light heavyweight. And then Sean Jordan did at heavyweight. So not a guy that gets put out of there very often. Vittori, we all know, has a head like a cinder block. And you know what? Kind of ditto Paulo Costa. Like, Izzy got him out of there, but that's it. So I don't view it as too much of a, like, oh no, his best days are behind him. He fought guys who are very good, and if they're not very good, they're very hard to finish. The finishing sequence here was pretty standard stuff. Whittaker kept showing his jab, because he's got a good jab. And Aliskerov reacted the same way every time. He kind of raised his lead leg, a bit of a shield, lead hand, went out low a bit, kind of looking to parry, and he kind of like leaned back a little bit, curls up into kind of a standing ball on one leg, like, yeah. Um, you can't. I don't care if you have good defensive reactions, and I'm not sure this is a good defensive reaction. But even if you have a good defensive reaction, if you do the same thing multiple times in a row, the best fighters, even very good fighters, are gonna make you pay for that. So about the third time he did that, Whitaker showed the jab, got that reaction, blitzed forward, right hand over the lead hand of Alaskarov, cracks him, hurts him, throws the 1-2 head kick. The head kick misses. But he sees the reaction once again that Alaskarov has to that. So he's got him against the fence now. He looks to change level, see if there's any reaction. No reaction from Alaskarov. So jab, dip, uppercut, drops him. Dunzo. Yeah, really good win for Whitaker. He wants to make one more push for the belt. It's really hard when the guys fighting for the belt next have both beaten you, in one case twice. In fact, they both finished you, because Izzy knocked him out their first fight, and DDP knocked him out. The second fight with Izzy and Whitaker was super, super close. Like razor thin. But didn't go his way. So getting either of those fights back is not impossible, but you're just in a rough spot when that's the reality you're dealing with. I'm not going to be too down on Alaskarov for this one. Couple of reasons. One, the circumstances under which he took this fight they were not good. He was already cutting weight for his previous fight that got rescheduled. I mean, he was supposed to fight last week on the Perez and Tyra card. He was in Vegas during fight week, cutting weight when he got the call for this fight. So then you take a flight halfway around the world, basically, from Vegas to, this is like a 10-hour flight, Vegas to Saudi Arabia. Has to cut weight again, starts doing media obligations, and then on top of that, you have to fight one of the best middleweights in the world, one of the best middleweights the sport's ever seen. That's not being behind one 8-ball, it's like several. I don't think this is always going to be kind of tough for him, because Robert Whitaker's tough for everybody in that division. But I'm not going to hold this one too much against him. So, just not going to be mad at him or too down on him. The number of people out here going, you love to see the Dagestani guy get fraud checked. Like, no. This was a late notice replacement, a late shift for both of them, but for Alaskarov, who then had to relocate around the globe and then take on short notice one of the best guys in the world. That's not your fraud check fight, people. That isn't it. Oh no, you lost to Robert Whitaker. You know how many other people lost to that guy? No, this is not that kind of fight, not that kind of performance. I imagine he'll bounce back, and full credit to Alaskarov, who has done nothing but be a class act. That's the other thing about this. Like, this is almost a pressure release for all the people who are still a little annoyed that Khabib left the way he did and just really wanted to see him lose, or they're still a little bit bitter at Islam Makhachev for... I mean, in fairness to Makhachev, like, he beat some of the most beloved guys in the sport. People like Charles Oliveira, because he was on that big run. Fun fights, finishing guys. He beat Dustin Poirier in Poirier's last stand. He beat Volkanovski twice, and people love Volk for good reason. And there's a little bit of, like, there, and there's just this kind of takeover that some of those guys from that part of the world are staging. You've also got Umar Nurmagomedov, who's poised to do some big things at bantamweight. But there's just this like pressure valve that people took this as a release for. Like, haha, see, they're human. Like, they're always human. Question is, what can you do about it in the cage? And it's just really unfortunate. Alaskarov did nothing to deserve some of the borderline vitriol he's been on the wrong end of. He was complimentary of Whitaker the whole way, made no excuses after the fight, said, "Yep, he got me. Gonna try to do better next time." What more do you want out of the guy? That's the attitude you should have after a loss. So he took a big step up, an inadvisable step up if we're just being selfish here. Let's be very honest about that. If you're managing Alascarov's career and the UFC calls you on a week's notice to fly around the world and take on Bobby freaking Knuckles, you shouldn't take that fight. Especially when you're already cutting weight in town for another fight. None of that is good. He did it anyway because I assume there was some kind of financial incentive and the whatever flowery language you wish to ascribe, the competitive spirit that works contrary to your best interest. And he made a calculated decision. If he gets back to fighting the level of guys he should be fighting, I mean, he was supposed to fight. Who was the guy he was supposed to fight on the Perez and Tyra card? Because I thought it was a reasonable opponent. Yeah, Muniz. Okay, that turned into Antonio Tricoli, and we'll talk about him later. But yeah, dude, remake Andre Muniz and Ikram Alaskarov. That was a very reasonable. I won't say the most reasonable. That was a very reasonable fight for him, given what he'd done already in his first couple of UFC fights. That was a reasonable step up, and would have been an important fight for Muniz too, for a lot of reasons. So, if you can rebook that, I forget exactly how bad the injury to Muniz was, but that's the kind of fight he should have next. He should not start fighting the guys ranked 11 through 15 off of this, just because he was in the main event. Just please don't. Whitaker intimated he might be, because he got out of this fight clean. It doesn't get much cleaner than this. I don't think he got hit solidly even one time. But you've got the Perth card coming up, UFC 305, and we have our main event for that. We'll talk about that later, but he said maybe he'll serve as backup for that, or maybe something else might come up for that card, so we'll have to wait and see on some of that. But man, I was just happy for the guy. I really was happy for Robert Whitaker. By all accounts, one of the good guys of the sport. Getting to have a big kind of moment like that, so feel-good moment in a sport that provides very few of them. And as previously mentioned, I don't hold this loss too much against Alaskarov. Co-main event, not a whole lot here. Alexander Volkov and Sergey Pavlovich. Again, I swapped my pick after I saw them next to each other at some of the press conferences. Weird thing about this fight. So Volkov was 4 inches taller. He's 6'7", to the 6'3" of Pavlovich. But Pavlovich, because he has those long arms, had the reach advantage of 4 inches. Here's the thing. Against some guys, the height would then not be much of a factor. Volkov knows how to fight kind of long. He's got a good kicking game and a good kicking background. He used that and a pretty good jab and a lot of southpaw fighting, which gave him a better view of the right hand of Pavlovich, and just kind of moved, jabbed, body kicks, side kicks to the leg, just outpointed, outstruck, out-techniqued Pavlovich for 3 rounds, busted up his face, got a win. I like Volkov as a general rule. I don't think he's ever going to be champion, but very good win for him, very good win. The fight we have to talk about is up next. So let's talk about the clown show that is Kelvin Gastelum, shall we? So the fight itself, he beats Daniel Rodriguez via unanimous decision, 230-27 to 29-28. 30-27 for Gastelum is a bit, no. Rodriguez should have had the second. He landed the much better punches in the second round. The way that played out. But Gastelum moves forward and got a takedown, and that seemed to sway them. That Rodriguez should have had the second, minimum. My opinion. I don't care if you give Gastelum the first and third. I think I did. But, so here's the thing about that, though. At the, pre-fight press conference, so fight week, it comes out that fight is not going to be at welterweight. Kelvin Gastelum said we have to fight at middleweight. Daniel Rodriguez had already cut down to 178, I think, and said, word came down, you're getting, Gastelum's not going to make weight. He wants to change it. Rodriguez said, fine, how about 180? And apparently this was unacceptable to the Gastelum crew, said middleweight. So they bumped it up to 185. Rodriguez revealed actually some of the, because he loses this fight, but he revealed a little bit of some of the incentives he had to accept the change of weight class. Let's see if I can find that here. Okay. So he is claiming that he got a new 6-fight deal with the UFC that included a raise in his purses and got 30% of Gastelum's purse. You know what? Respect. I just have to throw out some respect for that one. That's a pretty decent get to then go into this fight. And he performed well. I don't... You could argue if you wanted to be real hipster about the first round. Not even real hipster, but if you wanted to be... you could argue he won 1 and 2. I don't find it the most persuasive argument, but I don't think it's wildly out of bounds. So you perform well, get a new contract. I mean, the 6 fights doesn't actually matter because the UFC can cut you whenever they want, especially if you're coming off a loss. But a bump in pay and a chunk of what Gastelum made, you know what? Some good business sense going on there for him, so I'll give him some credit there. Now I have to talk about this, again, the clown show that is Kelvin Gastelum. So this guy, after the fight, first thing he says, he sucks up to the Saudi crowd, which responds somewhat positively to it. And then says, I'm a company guy, I love the UFC, I love the UFC brass. Just disgusting stuff. Really just disgusting stuff. And then somewhere along the line he says, I'm sorry about missing weight. I'll try to do better. I know it's not the first time I've had to do this, but nobody's perfect. And my man, this is like the 4th time you've missed weight in the UFC. Okay. Well, let's run through this. It's at least the 3rd. And I want to say more than that. So let's have a quick look here. No, this would actually be 4. Okay. So his first weight miss is in 2015. His first ever loss, loses a split decision to Tyron Woodley. He weighed 180 for that. He misses at welterweight again when he fights Johnny Hendricks, who weighs 171 and a quarter. He got close up. Fair enough, man. You got close on that one. Oh, sorry. That's not his first weight miss was not Tyron Woodley. My mistake. His first weight miss was when he fought Nico Musoke. He weighed 172 and 3/4. So an attempt was clearly made in that one, but missing by, over a pound. Not good. And then, yeah, that Woodley fight, he didn't even try. Then, yeah, Hendricks, so that was his third. So this is his fourth. His fourth instance of just terrible weight management. I can't express enough how pathetic I find it for a fighter to sign a contract to fight on a date at a weight, and when the time comes, like during fight week, your response is, I can't get within 10 pounds of the agreed upon weight. That's just, that's ridiculous. And especially for a guy, I called him fat for a long time because you miss weight 3 times, I call you fat. Like that was my thing for a long time. Was an achievement you unlocked. Unreliable, earned the title of fat. So there was like, because Oliveira had a problem at featherweight, missing weight a lot. So there was Fat Charles Oliveira. Was John Lineker one? I think there was Fat John Lineker. There was somebody else down in those real low weight classes. And yeah, Fat Calvin Gastelum. Well, back to being fat. Um, and that's I mean, you could argue he won this fight by being fatter. Like, he landed some okay punches because he still got fast hands, but ultimately it was, especially in the third round, it was just a lot of, hey, I got a takedown, let me lay on you and just put my belly on you. Um, I don't know how anyone could sign to fight Kelvin Gastelum at this point. You have no track record of reliability from this guy. I mean, there was a joke on commentary. Commentary last night, by the way, pretty bad. But there was a joke made during this fight, whether we're talking about the weight issue, and they kind of brought up the sequence of events, and Daniel Cormier, apparently somewhat uninformed, that I think John Anik mentioned, you know, yeah, we knew he was going to miss, and the first thing Rodriguez offered was 180. And Cormier said, well, what happened? And Bisping chimed in with, well, then Kelvin Gastelum suggested 205. And it's a good burn, for the record. Um, what a... For a guy who's been with the UFC as long as Gastelum has, and let's be fair here, I remember getting a fair amount of, like, pushback, because when he won his season of The Ultimate Fighter, he beat Uriah Hall to do it. Uriah Hall was the destroyer of that season. He scored a couple of nasty knockouts. And I remember being part of the roundtable for the predictions for that one back when we used to do those at 411. And like, all of us picked Gastelum. And we got such pushback for like being hipsters and contrarians. And the reality is, like, yeah, you've got a devastating striker in Uriah Hall, but you've got a just solid wrestler with a good chin in Gastelum. Those have plus, the UFC at that point, especially on Tough, had a fairly well documented track record of hyping up guys with some like explosive finishing ability and then them fumbling or stumbling badly when it came to actually being in the UFC. So there was actually a lot of reason to pick Gastelum there, but I remember people being, just a little salty at us for that one. But his UFC debut was 2013, April, so he's a little over 11 years into this. To have missed weight now 4 times, and he's got some good wins during the course of that run. I thought he lost that Jacare fight, so I'm just looking through his... I mean, he actually did drop Weidman pretty badly at the end of the first round in their fight, but then he knocked out Bisping, who shouldn't have been in that fight to begin with, for a variety of reasons. The split over Jacare, I thought Jacare beat him. Then has that epic fight with Israel Adesanya. Great fight. And then but he can't consistently put it out there. I don't think he won the Chris Curtis fight. You take away that headbutt, Curtis wins that fight. I don't know. Just you do something like this, you're becoming a clown. And I have lost all patience and interest in anything that man does. Um, just, no, just no. At middleweight, Shara Magomedov defeated Antonio Trocoli via TKO 227 to the third. Um, Somebody on Twitter, I forget which one, I apologize, I retweeted it, so if you follow me, you can find it. One of those like slightly sarcastic comedy MMA accounts said, Shara Magomedov has the same energy as the first level boss in a video game who becomes a regular enemy by the last few levels. Yeah, that's kind of fair. Um, Pretty good kickboxer. Anybody who's got decent takedowns is giving him a lot of problems. Uh, he did a decent enough job fending off takedowns against the fence, but Truckley took this on very short notice and was just kind of a heavy bag by the end of it. Not a lot there. Then Volkan Oezdemir knocked the stuffing out of Johnny Walker, 228 of the first round. Cracked him with a leaping left hook, got him ducking against the fence, and just murked him with an uppercut. Then one more for good measure when he's on the ground, because who doesn't love a good coffin nail? Um, yeah, Johnny Walker looked off. I don't know exactly what, but he did not look the same way he's looked in the past. Like something was not quite connecting and clicking for him in this fight. One wonders if Ankalaev didn't kind of break something in him. If Ankalaev didn't, Oezdemir certainly did here with this one. Good grief, what a knockout. That was your main card. On the prelims, Nasrat Haqparast defeated Jared Gordon via split decision, 29-28. I kind of thought Gordon won this. I'm just going to be honest with you. Fun scrap. There was no fight of the night awarded. I think I would have given it to these two. This was a fun little one. But yeah, I have to feel bad for Gordon. I don't think it's terrible to score it for Haqparast, but I don't agree with that. Such are the perils of the scoring criteria right now that you can get things that you don't agree with that are still understandable, justifiable, and acceptable within the parameters set forth. Um, Decent little scrap. Look that one up if you want. If you want a good one. Um, but yeah, felt bad for Gordon, man. I thought he won. Um, Featherweight, Felipe Lima, short notice, normally a bantamweight, beats Muhammad Naimov via rear naked choke, 115 of the third. I actually thought Lima won the first round. Then Naimov started finding some more stuff in the second. But third round, Lima is able to just try a takedown, get to a clinch, hit a go behind, or a duck under into a go behind. So gets the back. Duck under, gets the back, gets the choke very quickly. Heck of a debut for Lima. I think pretty highly of Muhammad Naimov. Um, Lima did some really solid work here, so hats off to him. Uh, See, next up, welterweight, Rinat Fakhretdinov defeated Nicholas Dalby via split decision, 29-28. Could go 29-28 either way here. Don't remember who I scored this for when I was covering, because I didn't do this live. I did it after the fact. Um, Ultimately, I think 29-28 either way is fine on this one. Bantamweight Muin Gafurov defeated Kyung Ho Kong via unanimous decision 30-27 across the boards. Couple of fun little wrestling exchanges. Kong had some pretty good butterfly guard work at some different points to facilitate his stand-ups. Gafurov wound up winning the first two. Kong was winning the third until the last couple of seconds when Gafurov cracked him with a wheel kick. Dropped him. If there'd have been a lot more time left in that round, he might have got a finish. Enough to get the round back. Light heavyweight Magomed Gaziasulov defeated Brenjison Hiberio via majority decision. 229-28, and then obviously 128-28. Don't get the 10-8 here, if I'm being candid. Really don't get that one. Hibario landed a couple of good calf kicks early, but Gaziasulov um, ultimately able to out-wrestle him. And good passing game, pretty good top control, and Hibario's get-ups and just ground game and bottom game in general left something to be desired. And kicking everything off, Chung Ho Lee defeated Xiao Long via split decision, 29-28. Fun little... The pace on these two guys was kind of nuts. They just went at it like a couple of badgers for 15 minutes. Lee's knee game in the clinch, he landed a bevy of knees to the body of Xiao that he just did not like. So that was an okay little fight. And yeah, that ultimately was the card. A card that kind of limped across the finish line with a few decent bits here and there. So I already mentioned no fight of the night. Performances went to Robert Whitaker, Shara Magomedov, Volkan Oezdemir, and Felipe Lima. So you got to finish on this card. You got a bonus. Um, I would have given Hack Preston Gordon fight of the night. I thought that was a good fight. I don't know if it's going on my fight of the year or it's not. It was the best fight on this card, and I just kind of wish that was rewarded a little more consistently. Who would I have taken off? Shara would have gone off. I would have just given the other three bonuses and then just had another, like, that's how I would have done it at least, so. But that's just me. I have no say over those things in actuality. My report is in the MMA Zone of 411mania.com if you want to go give it a read. Always appreciated. Thank you. So check it out over there if you're so inclined. Okay, moving on. This coming Saturday, UFC 303 from the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. They put Buena Silva and Chasson on the main card. I want to laugh about this very briefly. Bear with me. One last thing from UFC on ABC 6. So I forget his exact position in the Saudi royal family, but the guy in charge of the sports fund there, who does the sports washing, who's throwing gobs of money at boxing and whatnot, Turki Al-Sheikh, said he would like to have a bigger UFC event in Saudi Arabia in the near future. Probably going to happen. And he's trying to get Zack Snyder to make it the MMA movie equivalent of Cinderella Man, and I have to laugh at that for a variety of reasons. One, Zack Snyder doesn't make those kinds of movies. Two, there is no MMA equivalent to James Braddock. Whatever kind of story you want to cobble together about a hard luck MMA fighter, it's going to end with them as champion still working another job. Because that's kind of how this goes. Your payout for winning a UFC title in some cases is just what James Braddock was making in, the Great Depression. It's just, oh, it's just sad. And then you got Dana White lying through his teeth about nobody knows what these fighters make. Buddy, either you're lying or your entire organization committed any number of serious crimes and did not disclose information during a federal lawsuit. And I think your lying is more likely. Just throwing that out there. Sorry. Moving on, because that amused me for some reason. All right, UFC 303. Here we go. Main event on 2 weeks' notice for both of these guys. For the light heavyweight title, Alex Pereira and Yuri Prochazka. This is a rematch of a fight for the vacant belt from, just last November of last year, when Pereira defeated Prochazka, knocked him out in the second round. Then Pereira went on to knock out Jamal Hill in the first round. I mean, I like this fight. I'm actually excited about this fight. And I'm not... What I'm struggling with here is... I don't know how different this is ultimately going to be from the previous encounter. It's not that neither guy has had the time to, fix things or adjust themselves, but didn't Yuri come back and win one fight between now and then? Yeah, he beat Rakic. He got hit a lot in that fight, though. Like, this is kind of my thing. Prochazka just doesn't have a great answer for calf kicks, and Pereira has great kicks. Prochazka walks into a lot of traffic and relies on his chin, and that worked okay for him the first time, but that's not a sustainable defensive plan against someone like Pereira. I don't think it's impossible for Prochazka to win this fight. I just think it's an uphill battle for him. And would be even under ideal circumstances. We are definitively not dealing with ideal circumstances here. So I'm going to go with Pereira, but I'm looking forward to the fight. These two maniacs have just the right kind of mesh of psychotic energy. Very much looking forward to the fight, but I imagine we get kind of a replay of the previous one where Prochazka has moments, but I don't know that he's going to be able to find enough sustained success to deal with kind of everything that Pereira brings to the table. Co-main event. This is another very good fight. Featherweight came together late. Brian Ortega and Diego Lopez. Ortega still has a lot of ability. In fact, I mean, his comeback after his shoulder injury against Yair Rodriguez to beat him in their rematch with a really nice arm triangle back from February of this year. Really nice. I mean, he was on a 2-fight. He's only lost 3 times. Lost to Max Holloway. Fair. Lost to Volkanovski. Fair. And had the shoulder injury against Yair Rodriguez. Now, I don't mean to say that it was a fluke. He was pulling himself out of an armbar. It wasn't just the shoulder came out. Like, there was stuff Rodriguez was doing that contributed to it. But he performed very well in that rematch with Rodriguez. I didn't think he was going to win that one. He still has some of it. And then you've got Diego Lopez, who is a Tasmanian devil of a fighter. He gave Movsar Evloev problems when he stepped in on short notice to fight him in his UFC debut. Since then, 3 first-round finishes. Armbars Gavin Tucker, knocks out Pat Sabatini, TKO Sadiq Youssef. This is a really, really good fight. I expect we'll have some fun brawling. We will see probably some sick jiu-jitsu transitions. I don't expect this to be a lot of grappling, but we'll definitely see some of it, unless somebody gets caught with something flush right away. Odds like Lopez, and I can totally understand why. I think I'm going to lean towards Ortega, and I'm going to, not by a lot, the odds are close, they just, again, kind of lean towards Lopez, but I'm going to give Ortega the benefit of the doubt here. Might be wrong. Might be very wrong. Ortega 33, Lopez 29. Let me asterisk this one. There's some stuff I want to look at. I want to do a little bit of a deeper tape study on these two and see how they kind of line up physically when they're close to each other. Leaning Ortega at the moment. I'm going to leave myself, but that one I'm going to reserve the right to change my mind on that one. But good fight. Light heavyweight. This next fight. This started life as Jamal Hill versus Khalil Roundtree. Roundtree had a doping issue that is not probably going to be a big deal. It's a tainted supplement thing, which he disclosed to the relevant agency, and he's going to take a minor suspension, but I don't think it's going to be a big deal. He was replaced by Carlos Ulberg. Olberg and Jamal Hill, not a bad fight. Little bit risky for Olberg because if he beats Jamal Hill, he's not going to get to be like that's it. You're stuck fighting the top of that division from there on out. Um, However, Hill then pulled out, had a knee issue, was replaced by Anthony Smith. Olberg then pulled out, and middleweight Roman Dolidze steps in and is now fighting Anthony Smith. This fight just got worse. If there's some other fight on this card that's going to have an issue during fight week, it's going to be this fight, and I don't know which of them falls out. Just every iteration of that fight is worse than the previous one for a variety of reasons. I'm not saying that to dog on anyone who was willing to step up, but just those matchups got less and less interesting each time. I don't want to dog on Anthony Smith. I really don't. But I don't know if I'm in a place where I pick him to win fights. Odds are with Dolidze. I'm going to go with Dolidze. Why not? If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I don't favor him by a whole lot. But Smith was struggling a little bit with Petrino, but before Petrino's inexperience caught up with him, so. Women's bantamweight up next. One half of one of the worst title fights in UFC history. Not the worst, one of the worst. Mayra Bueno Silva and Macy Chasson. I don't care about this fight. I don't care about anything related to this fight. At all. I don't know. Probably Bueno Silva. But, once again, who cares? This division sucks. I mean, you're not getting a title fight off of this win. They're going to throw Raquel Pennington against Kayla Harrison, and boy, is that going to go badly for one of them. Either Kayla just mauls Pennington, or Kayla gasses late, and just we wind up talking about how she's not a bantamweight, because frankly, she isn't. This fight, yeah, I don't care. Sorry, I hate to just be that down on a fight on the main card, but I don't care. I don't think it's going to be a very good fight. Kicking off the main card, we have welterweights Ian Machado, Gary, and Michael Venom Page. Moderately interested in this one. Gary's a guy who I had a very poor first impression of. But he's worked very diligently to improve his game since then. Not sure I thought he beat Jeff Neal. I might have scored that for him, but I'm not sure. I kind of thought he lost the Gabe Green fight, for being honest. So there's a few times I think judging could have gone against him. I don't think he's ever like robbed any, been the beneficiary of a straight up robbery, but a couple of those could have easily gone against him. And then we got Page, who, despite being 37, still has a lot of bounce in his step, a lot of pep, had a good UFC debut when he beat Kevin Holland. Logically, I should pick Gary. I'm aware of this. I'm not going to. I don't know how good I feel about that, but I'm going with Page. The age difference is a big deal there. And again, Page has a lot of experience over Gary, too, so I don't know. I'm going with Page because it would be funnier. I'm going to be honest. I could make a reasonable case for either guy. Gary has a slight favorite at the moment. I think that's fair. I don't know how Gary is going to deal with someone who engages the way Page does. A lot of Gary's game is built around handling very traditional entries, very traditional thought processes, very traditional tactics. Page does not employ those, which might backfire spectacularly, and he'll just lunge into something and get cold-cocked. That's very possible. One might even argue that's likely. But Gary's not fought a really athletic guy, especially not a guy who fights the way Page does. So I'm going with Page. I can live with being wrong on that one. And that's your main card. Co-main event, middleweights, you have Joe Pyfer and Marc-Andre Barrio. Pyfer coming off of that loss to Jack Hermanson, we were just not ready for a 5-round fight. I think everybody gave that. Yeah, that was unanimously 3-2. They gave Pyfer won the first 2 rounds, but couldn't sustain it against Hermanson, and Hermanson just beat him down the stretch. But in a 3-round fight, Pyfer is very hard to beat. Barrio's been doing some okay work recently. But he kind of tries to just grind you down. And he eats a lot of punches. Not as many as he used to, but I think they're being nice to Pyfer here and giving him a bit of a rebound that's still a test. This is not a gimme. Be very clear about that. Marc-Andre Barrio is not a gimme fighter. But this is Pyfer favorable. And I don't really have so I'm going to go with Pyfer. All right. Next, we've got Cub Swanson and Andre Fili. Didn't these two fight before? I feel like they have. I might be wrong, though. No, they haven't fought before. How have these two not fought before? Cub Swanson coming off a win over Hakeem Dawodu. That was August of last year. Had a bantamweight fight in 22 when Jonathan Martinez stopped him with leg kicks. Beat Darren Elkins before that. Yeah, he's been a bit up and down recently, but he's removed from that big 4-fight losing streak. Okay, in fairness to this 4-fight losing streak, listen to who he fought. Brian Ortega, they had a good fight before he got guillotine choked. Frankie Edgar, Renato Moicano, and then Shane Burgos, and that was split. It was a pretty good fight, too. Why was that not fight of the night? Hang on, what else happened on that card? Oh, Iaquinta and Cowboy. I would have gone Burgos and Swanson personally, but it's just me. Then he beat Kron Gracie, beat Daniel Pineda, lost to Giga Chikadze, beat Darren Elkins, lost to Martinez, beat Hakeem Dawodu. So, and then you got Fili, both guys kind of veterans. Swanson a little bit longer in the tooth, but Fili has Fili ever had a losing? Fili has never actually. Okay, he's got a losing streak, sort of. So in 2020, he loses to Bryce Mitchell, has a no contest with Daniel Pineda, and then loses to Joe Anderson Brito. So technically there's a losing streak there. But recently lost to Dan Ige. Ige knocked him stupid. That was a rough stoppage loss for him, man. Ige beat Lucas Almeida before that, lost to Nathaniel Wood. So historically, this is the kind of fight that Fili will win. Fili's he's got some ability, good hand speed, good power, rangy guy. If I pick Swanson, it's sentimental. Do I mind throwing this pick into sentimentality? I don't think I do. I don't think I mind that at all. Yeah, Fili's a non-trivial favorite, about 2-1. This is an overly sentimental pick. It really is, but I'm going with Swanson. And he's probably going to get knocked out, but that's what I'm going with. Featherweights, we have Charles Jourdain and Jean Silva. So, Jourdain lost to Sean Woodson his last time out. That was split. It should not have been split. That was a pretty clear Woodson win for me. 1-2 in a row before that. Kron Gracie, that was a weird fight. And then he guillotined Ricardo Ramos. Been a bit up and down. Losses to Burgos and Nathaniel Wood in there. Silva will take forever and a day to walk to the ring, or the cage, or whatever. He's had a couple of UFC fights, right? It's one or, I know it's at least one. I want to say he's had two. I'm going to double check that because I could be very wrong. He's 12-2, 9-fight winning streak. Yeah, only one UFC win. He's got power. He's fighting out of a good team. He comes out of the Fighting Nerds camp, which is a very good team. Jordan's more experienced and a much more known commodity. Let me go with Jordan. I, yeah, he might drop the first round, but I don't know how Silva's going to hold up down the stretch. He's a very muscular guy for the weight class, and I don't know if his cardio is going to be properly set up. So let me go with Jordan there, and I'm just, I don't feel, I don't know. Let me think what other one I want to asterisk before, but maybe that one. Bantamweights, Peyton Talbot and Giannis Gamori. Writing's kind of on the wall here. Nothing against Gamori, who's 12-2, but dropped his UFC debut. Talbot is 2-0 in the UFC or 1-0? 2-0. Wins over Nick Aguirre and Cameron Simon. The UFC like Talbot, young, talented guy. They're not, and when they like you, they'll bring you along the way a fighter should be brought along. This is, once again, not a gimme, but they are appropriately not throwing Talbot into anything approximating the deep end. I have no problem picking Talbot here. Let's see. Next up, Michelle Waterson Gomez and Jillian Robertson. What are we doing here? I'm surprised they're both still in the UFC, if we're being honest. Odds like Robertson. A little surprised by that. Waterson Gomez. Okay, Waterson Gomez is on a 4-fight losing streak. She is 1-6 in her last 7, and that one win was a split decision over Angela Hill. You could have scored the Luana Pinheiro fight for her. I did think she won that Carla Esparza fight, for the record. I did score that one for her. But ultimately, that's still a rough stretch. Marina Rodriguez battered her and got a stoppage. I don't know. Robertson's only 29, but she's been with the UFC since 2017 and has a lot of fights in the promotion. 3-1 in her last 4. Only loss was to Tabitha Ricci, coming off a win over Poliana Viana. Michelle Waterson is 38. I'm not saying that to be mean. And you're crying out loud, I'm 38. Almost. I'm 38, coming up on 39. I'm not saying that to be mean, but the tread runs out of the tread wears off of those tires at some point. And I think we've gotten to that point with her, so Robertson it is. Heavyweights, because why? Andrei Arlovsky, who will be getting paid something like $300,000 for another boring point fest, will fight Martin Bidet. Arlovsky's lost his last 3 fights to Marcos Rogerio de Lima, Dontel Mays, and then Waldo Cortez Acosta. He actually looked okay in the Cortez Acosta fight. I don't know. Look, man, Arlovsky's been doing this since the year of the flood. He's 45. His pro debut, he's the last guy on the UFC roster who debuted before 9/11. His pro debut was in 1999. I have a car that's that old. And it's been sitting for a few years and needs a new transmission and is going to go away soon. I respect to that guy for still being out there. And Martin Bidet looked okay in his UFC debut. He's 4-1 in the UFC. If he'd been able to hold on just a little longer, I think he would have had Shamil Gaziev. I don't know. This could very easily be the kind of fight that Arlovsky just slows down, outpoints, wins the way he's been winning. That wouldn't surprise me at all. The odds are pretty solidly with Bidet, though. How old is he? I was just there. Let me double check this. He's 32. Jeez. He's like 15. 13. He's 13 years younger. 4-fight losing streak for Arlovsky. I got to jump off of that horse at some point. All right, I'll go with the odds, but I'm going to asterisk this one, I think. Arlovsky's just got a way of making some of these younger, slightly less experienced fighters fight the way Arlovsky wants to fight, and they can't beat him doing that. Flyweights up next. Saruya and Carlos Hernandez. So Saruya is 9-0, one of those Japanese flyweight prospects. Is this the road to UFC final, or did he already win that? This doesn't indicate. Let me have a quick look at Hernandez. 9-3, coming off a loss. 2-2 in the UFC, losses to Alan Nascimento and Tatsuro Taira. Has a split decision over Victor Altamirano, and then a technical decision over Dennis Bondar. That was a little bit weird. Feels like Saruya. Let me quick look at the odds real fast on this one. Oh, the odds are very heavily with Saruya. Yeah, that's I'm not sure I'd put him that heavy, but Saruya's demonstrated some ability if you've kind of caught some of his road to UFC stuff and looked up some of his more regional stuff. Spell that guy's name right. Tsuruyuya. Tsuruyuya. Hang on. Tsuruyuya. Okay. I moved one of those U's to where it was not supposed to be. And kicking everything off, bantamweights Ricky Simone and Vinicius Oliveira. Oliveira, 20-3. Lock dog, fun violence guy. 3-fight winning streak. Had a really good win over Bernardo Sopai in his UFC debut. That was a nice knockout. Unfortunately for him, Simone is a tough matchup for him. He's on a 2-fight losing streak to Song Yadong and Mario Bautista, though. Simone's hittable. He's got a really good motor, great wrestling, will just smother you. This is a serious check for Oliveira. It's a real serious check for Oliveira. Part of the problem, though, is Simone is just so hittable. He's so hittable. I think I'll still respect Simone and go with Simone here, but Oliveira could very easily take that. If Simone gets too predictable with his entries, Simone will just knee his head into the third row. All right, that's what we're gonna go with. So I got a couple of asterisks there for stuff I want to look at later, but we'll see how that's gonna go. Live coverage Saturday, MMAZone411mania.com. You all know how that works, so stop by, say hello if you're so inclined. I always appreciate it. All right, moving on. Let's talk. Let's do Conor McGregor first. So Conor McGregor had already mentioned had pulled out of the fight with Michael Chandler, UFC 303. We covered some of that drama. I think it was Chael Sonnen who was kind of trolling him online and got Conor to just reveal why he pulled out of that fight. He broke one of his pinky toes. I forget which one. It doesn't really matter. Broken toe. He revealed that, put up x-rays, showed image of his toe being, bruised up and swollen and broken. It's broken. I don't have any reason to believe he's lying about this. If Conor did that to try and prove Chael a fool and generate sympathy or something, it failed miserably. He was roundly mocked for this by everyone. Rafael dos Anjos, of course, posted the photo of him with his busted foot when he had to pull out of their fight. He's like, okay, I broke my whole foot. You had a little boo-boo there. And you knew RDA was waiting on that one. I don't even blame him for it. Look, there was a time in Conor McGregor's career when he would have fought despite this. I mean, he fought Chad Mendes with no ACL. But he's not in that place anymore. And it doesn't make sense for him to risk what he would be risking under those conditions. So, Michael Chandler continues to just rot on the shelf. And Conor is now, in fairness to Conor, let's stress this, he'd only pulled out like once before with an injury. There was one of his Cage Warriors fights where he was supposed to defend, I think it was he was supposed to defend his featherweight belt, and he wound up having to withdraw due to an injury and then moved up to lightweight and became a double champ because Conor doesn't defend belts. But in the UFC, this is his first injury removal from a fight. So give him that credit. Prior to this, he was consistent that if he signed on the dotted line, he'd be there. But he's not in a position at this point to risk what he'd be risking under any circumstances other than those he wishes to. And honestly, I can't blame him. I can laugh about it, but I can't pretend that I wouldn't be doing something similar were I in his position. So there's that. Yeah. All right. Other news, and then we will be about ready to get out of here. So last week, not too long after I posted the show, actually, after it went live, which is slightly scheduled, the UFC revealed the main event for UFC 305. This is their card in Perth. There's the list of UFC events. They moved it. So this will be August 18th. And they reviewed a bit of this card, some of which is not good, for being honest. But main event for the middleweight championship, Dricus du Plessis defends against former two-time champion Israel Adesanya. The UFC had been trying to make this fight before. It fell apart because Izzy couldn't beat Sean Strickland. We're getting it here. It's a good fight. I'm not going to sit here and complain about it. It's a good fight. I don't know who I favor. There's a lot about DDP's game that plays into what Izzy likes to do. At the same time, DDP's kind of a tank, and his physical strength is the kind of thing that has bothered Izzy in the past, especially if you can get him down. His takedowns in open space, DDP's, are not bad, and Izzy's defense against the cage is very good. But fence wrestling and space wrestling are almost two different sports. Not that there is fence wrestling as a sport, but if you take open mat, open space wrestling and then introduce the fence, wildly different. Wildly different skill set. Izzy is good at keeping you stalled out and being defensive against the fence. He's got some problems still in open space, especially if the other guy can time him. But I don't know. It's a good fight. Other fights announced for that card. Flyweight fight, Kai Kara-France and Steve Erceg. No complaints there. Really good fight. A heavyweight fight between Tai Tuivasa and Jairzinho Rozenstruik. That kind of sucks. Lightweight, Tom Nolan and Alex Reyes, trying to give Tom Nolan a home country pop. And Casey O'Neill versus Teresa Bleda, trying to give Casey O'Neill kind of a home country. She's from Scotland, but she lives and trains out of Australia, or is it the other way around? It's one of those two. Hang on, let me check. Yeah, born in Scotland, lives and trains and fights out of Gold Coast, Australia. I think it's where she is still. Or did she leave there? She might have moved. Did she move to Extreme Couture? It's kind of indicated she might have. Okay, either way. I think she still lives in Australia. But either way, some fairly serious roots there at this point in time. So that's what we're looking at the moment. One really good fight, one fight that I would really rather not watch, and a couple of acceptable fights. So more to come for UFC 305, I'm sure, so we'll keep our eyes peeled for that. We have the UFC very recently announced the main event for UFC on ESPN 60. ESPN, not Plus, will be Amanda Lemos and Virna Jandiroba. They are just scraping the bottom of the barrel for these things. What else is on that card? Brad Tavares and Jung Young Park. I got a soft spot for Jung Young Park. Duho Choi and Bill Algeo should be kind of fun. I don't care. Tracy Cortez and Miranda Maverick will be telling for both women, I think. Muhammad Usman, now that he can be on more of the roids. That is not a strong card. I'm going to be brutally honest about that. To be on ESPN proper, that is a weak card. It's just a weak card. Just got to keep the trains leaving the station on time, right? Keep the machinery turning. We already knew about the Denver card that's upcoming. Anything else take shape recently? That Abu Dhabi card, I don't think anything new has been announced for that. Again, 305 we talked about. How about that August 10th card? That's not looking great. But we don't have a main event, so that is not looking good. Sorry, guys. Some of these cards just don't look great on paper at the moment. Some of them don't have enough announced to really make a legitimate judgment, so I'm not going too far out. But I don't think it's unfair to look at August. I don't find that to be unfair, just for the record. Okay, that's what we got for fight announcements and whatnot. I'm going to check Twitter, see if anything crazy is broken while we've been recording. If not, we will do plugs and get out of here. All right. Nothing new. So, plugs. Monday, which statistically speaking is when you're going to be listening to this. Myself, Mark Radulich, and a couple of guests, Dorian Price, and cannot remember the other gentleman's name. Haven't had the pleasure of meeting him yet. We will be talking about the bike riders. That's Tom Hardy, Austin Butler. Story about the formation of, I forget which outlaw motorcycle club it is. Forgive me, but it's loosely based on the true story of how that group was founded. So we'll be reviewing that. Should be interesting. I know Dorian and his friend are both kind of into motorcycle culture. I have some family members who have been members of at least one major outlaw gang. I love my family. Some interesting choices have been made along the way, along everyone's some life courses there. Um, yeah. Last week on Damn You Hollywood, we talked Inside Out 2, so listen to our review of that. I believe it's still the #1 movie in the United States, if not the whole world. Good on them. It's a perfectly acceptable film, so full review if you want to hear the ups and the downs of that particular endeavor. All right, that's it for me. Well, I'll have WWE SmackDown coverage on Friday and UFC 303 on Saturday. Then we will be back here back here on Sunday just to talk UFC 303. There is no UFC event on the 6th of July, staying out of the way of the 4th, I imagine. So just a review of UFC 303, and of course, whatever news comes out during the subsequent timeline. So, hope to see you all next week. Thank you all very, very much. I appreciate the heck out of you as always. Stay safe out there and continue to be well, be safe, and behave.